Today we're talking about mastering ZipForms, and the handout says it's a step-by-step manual. Let's start with why we're going to spend time on this. If you were to take a look at what do real estate agents get paid to do, and you broke it down into its most fundamental component, do real estate agents get paid to show property? Do you get paid so much by the mile, right? So much by the hour? Do you get paid to give advice? So much by the word? Wouldn't that be great, right? Every word. I'd be rich, obviously, because I have a lot of words. So we get paid only when we get at the end of the process a buyer and a seller to sign a purchase agreement, a good one. A good one means one that the buyers and sellers both want. It's not necessarily a legal one, because lawyers could tear apart a lot of real estate contracts. That's why lawyers don't sell real estate, because they're, tearing apart the contract. One that the buyer and the seller both want is a good contract. So if you haven't gotten anyone to sign anything lately, then you're not going to get paid in the near future. What kinds of things do real estate agents have to get signed? Buyer representation agreements, listing agreements, purchase agreements. Those are the ones we're going to focus on. Now you can say, well, what about leasing and land? Yeah, we'll do that another time. So at the bare minimum, you need to know how to do that. Now, there's an advantage and a disadvantage to being on my team. And the advantage is the transaction coordinator knows a lot about forms, and I know a lot about forms, and we help you fill out forms. The disadvantage of being on the team is that the listing coordinator knows a lot about forms, and I know a lot about forms, and we help you with the forms. And the reason why that's a disadvantage is some people never learn how to do it themselves. And then it's Sunday night. And a buyer says, I want to make an offer tonight on the property. This property I went by, saw the open house tonight. Now I want to make an offer. And you're like, oh, now? Gee, I don't feel so good right now. Maybe could we maybe do it Monday? My cat is sick right now, so I don't think now is a good. Well, the reality is that you're stalling because you don't know how to do it, right? That's the bottom line. And the transaction coordinator we use has a life. You've heard about those things, with family and weekends and spends time with them. So 8 o'clock Sunday night, he's not going to be available to write an offer for you. Who do you know that doesn't have a life that might help you? Well, that might be me, but even sometimes I have something to do. You understand, you have to get to the point where you can do this yourself. You have to, right? Otherwise, you'll be reluctant. For some of you, the worst thing that could happen if somebody calls you up and says, hey, I want to list my house, can you come over right now and let's do it? Come over right now, let's do it. I don't now, right? I don't know how to fill out the forms. The transaction coordinator's on a break. I can't do it. All right. So that now I hope that gets you in the mood for wanting to learn how to do this. All right. Now, the handout, which has more than you wanted to know, probably about ZipForms. Let me just start off by saying, if I am not going to begin with how do you sign up for ZipForms, right? If you have never heard of the California Association of REALTORS and you haven't logged into their website and clicked on the buttons, then I'm not going to start that far back. But if you want to know how, I got it there. Right. I'm not going to spend time on that. You should go to your profile and make sure the name is the way you like it, and it's got your cell phone number in it and your DRE number and all the other things that would be normal in filling out I'm assuming you can do those things, right? I'm just assuming that. So where we're going to start with is what would you do to start a new transaction? And I have logged in. Well, I haven't logged in because I wanted to show you how to log in. Sure. So you log in to the California Association of Realtors website, car.org. Over here on the left is a circle. It says Realtor Secure Transactions. First one, that's the company that makes ZipForms is called Lone Wolf. And you see that red circle with the wolf howling? That's a ZipForms logo. We're going to click on Access Now. And then you wait, and then it pops up, right? And now we're looking at it. All right. So going back one step. First step, you have to find a house you want to write an offer on, right? So let's say your buyer says, I saw this beautiful condominium. It's located in Hayward, California. It's on K, and I want to buy it, right? I want to make an offer on this particular listing, right? And we're going to open it up, and I don't think the listing agent minds, but so you want to make an offer on this listing. So you would read it, right? Now, sometimes, like there's disclosures and sometimes there's an offer date. Let's say all of this is cool. What we want to sort of pay attention to maybe is this stuff down here, because the listing agent information eventually is going to need to go into ZipForms. You'll see why I'm highlighting that right now. And you also want this, which is the MLS number. So we're going to copy that. Notice that the MLS number begins with the letters ML, right? That stands for MLS listings. That may be important later when we talk about what happened. So let's go back to our ZipForms. Let's go back to ZipForms. Come on. And this is, if we look at the dashboard, right, this is what it looks like. It gives you tasks and things like that. We're not going to get into that. I'm going to say an opinion about that. I have some signings going on right now. If you want to know what the status is of some signatures that you've sent out, that's where you would look. But let's say we're going to create a new transaction, right? So there's a button here that says new transaction, and we're going to click on that button, and we're going to hope it opens up in a new window. That's what we're going to hope. Let's try it again. Oh, well, that's just special. Okay. So let's go here to transactions. Okay, we're going to see if we can get it to open up in a new window. Well, isn't that peachy? All right, I'm going to start again, just for, yeah. So let's try it one more time. Maybe it's unhappy that I've got Zoom going at the same time, although I've certainly done this before. Sometimes agents say, I don't understand why it took so long for the transaction coordinator to write the offer. All right. So we clicked on create a new transaction, and we're going to get some different choices. Now, in advance, I would have done something about templates, which I'm going to get to, but I wanted to, get to the big point, which is how do you actually create a transaction? It's usually the first two. We're going to buy that property. So we're going to create a new transaction. Now, notice it's starting off by asking for the name, the address of the property. So let me just move that over here. So I've got, and so the address of the property, I've copied from the MLS, and I'm going to put it. Now, what we put in here would kind of sort of depend. So let's say it's a buyer representation agreement. That's all we're doing. We don't have a property address. So we would put in the name of the buyer with the words buyer rep, because that's what we're doing. Now, if we're writing an offer on the property, we would typically use the address of the property, both for the name and, well, for the address, right? And we could put it in. But notice, before we do that, notice there's a little button over here, and it says MLS Connect. It's not really a button, but you get the idea. So I'm going to click on that and go back to, remember the ML number. Remember that number that began with ML, which was the MLS ID number. We're going to put that in. Property photos, they don't seem to go anywhere, but I just like the idea. We click on find, and it's hopefully going to find that MLS number. And around, all right, there it is. Beautiful picture, that's very helpful. And now it's imported all this information, and we click on use the listing. And so now it's put in the, I don't know why it didn't do it. Let me try it again. One more time. Find. It's fighting me today. It's fighting. Let's see if it does it this time. All right, well, I'm going to assume that it's, all right, we're going to, oh, I didn't click on save below. All right, that was my bad. We're going to click on residential. It wants to know. And we're going to talk in a minute about templates. So you can see I got some, right? I got some templates.
Michael, it's not a condominium.
Well, it
You
is.
said residential, so I'm like, oh,
Why? What did I pick?
residential.
Right. Well, we could say condominium. It doesn't really do anything in any of the
Oh,
forms.
okay.
Right.
Okay.
I mean, it's, you are correct. I was doing this to test you. To see.
Thank you. Hopefully I passed.
But it doesn't actually do, one of the things about ZipForms is that there's a lot of stuff that doesn't seem to populate anywhere in the forms, right? But anyhow, templates, we're going to talk about that next, but there's a bunch of different templates. And why would you have a template? Because of the stuff you can put in it. Now, what I mean by that, I'll give you an example, a personal buyer template. I don't know. How about basic buyer template? I don't even know which template that is. But if I hit save, it's going to import the information from the template. And because I'm using MLS Connect, it's going to import information about the property. And so when we do that, it's imported. Now, what that's done is it saved us the trouble of manually inputting the address of the property, the zip code of the property, etc. And this is a summary of what it imported. And what I would do first is I would click on the parties button and I would look at the parties. Now, in this particular one, I'm the listing agent, so that's why I'm in twice. I'm also, because I'm writing a fictitious offer, would be the selling agent. The other parties that we're interested in are the seller. Notice the seller is listed here, and the seller's information is in it. Where do we get the seller's information from? It was part of that MLS import, right? When MLS listings imported the information from the MLS, it includes that information. It also imported the listing agent information, but sometimes it's not perfect, right? And so I've given you in the handout what you really need to know. But you'll notice in this template, what I've got is what you really need to know. And there's samples of the templates in the handout. So the party is my name, my agent ID, which is my license number. You could put it either place. I think it doesn't really matter. I'm going to move it. I'm going to move it. It has your email. And does it have to have, this was something I'd worked on before. Let me just, the cell phone, do you need a business phone and a home phone? No. Do you need a fax? No. But we have one for you anyhow. The name of the firm is your brokerage. Now at EXP, there's 4 divisions. There's EXP of California Inc., EXP of Northern California Inc., EXP of Southern California Inc., and EXP of the Greater Los Angeles Area Inc., all of which I've included for you the information that you would need. And it has, by the way, Deborah Penny, somebody else was working on this. I usually do not fill this out because, well, they don't care, and I don't fill that. I have given you a sample, the screenshot of what the template looks like. This one was, I'm just, fixing it a little bit. So they do want to know the broker phone, whether you include the fax. Nobody's received a fax in decades. The street address, city, state, which we might want to put in. And so we filled out the parties and we click save. Now notice you could save it to your address book. If somebody is already in our address book, so for example, if the buyer, if I go over here and I click on buyer 1, and my buyer is somebody that I've already been communicating with in Google Contacts, for example, and I click on this and I find them, I can import information from my Google Contacts as the party. If I save it to the transaction, it means that in future contracts and forms, it's going to easily find that contact, right? So this is what you need in order to write an offer. You need to know the legal names of your buyer, the legal names. The way I sometimes ask buyers is, can you give me your name in the way you would want it to appear on a deed? When you get the top, what would that look like, right? And then I've been surprised at how many times the name I've been calling somebody does not appear on when they do that. They say, oh, that's just my nickname, but this is my real, or we need their real name, right? That's one thing. We need their email address. Why? Because we're going to send them stuff to sign, and we need their email address. Do we need their phone number? Not for ZipForms. ZipForms has a place for you to put in the buyer's phone number. It doesn't populate anywhere. It's just, I don't know. It's just there. If you asked it to print out a contact sheet on that transaction, it would appear on that contact sheet, but then it's on your phone in your contacts. Why would you need to do that? We don't do that anymore. So you don't need the buyer's home address. You don't have to put that in. You don't have to put in any, all you need is their legal name and their email address. So if we've identified the property we're going to write an offer on, and we've imported the property information through MLS Connect, and then we've got a template, and what the template is going to have is all of my information. If it's a buy-side template, it's going to have my information, my DRE number, my email address. It's going to have my broker's information, their DRE number. We don't need the broker's email address. You can put it in, but they never get sent anything, right? But you need the address of the brokerage and the zip code and that sort of stuff. You don't need everything that they ask for, right? But if we've created a template that has my information, my broker's information, and we're importing the property information, it takes about 5 minutes to write an offer. Trust me, right? Sometimes even less. Because most of the time writing the offer is getting all the information, the APN number and all that stuff about the property, the listing agent's name, the listing agent's email, the listing agent's DRE number, the listing broker, getting all of that information into the system takes more time than writing the offer does. Are there any questions about this so far? All right. Don't everybody blurt out one at once. So that MLS Connect is pretty cool. Would everybody agree? Pretty cool. It just doesn't work all the time. And if you're wondering, well, you know, what do you mean it doesn't work all the time? It only works if the property that you're writing the offer on is in your multiple listing service. So I'm in MLS listings. That listing of mine is actually in Bay East territory, the Bridge MLS. What that means is that if you're in Alameda County and you want to write an offer on my condo in Fremont, you're not going to be able to import the information directly from the MLS because I put it in a different MLS than yours too. And of course, if you're in MetroList and you want to write an offer on a property in San Jose, you're not going to be able to import the information. It won't work. Only works for your primary MLS. So what do? Just manually type all that stuff about the property, copy and paste? Well, let's see. You've got a couple of options. I picked a property that's pending that is definitely not in my MLS, right? And this is a nice little house down in Los Angeles. It's pending 21. It looks nice, right? It's you know, starter home kind of a place. So if I'm writing an offer on that, my MLS Connect is not going to work because not my MLS. I have two options. One option is if I look around because I'm curious in RPR, the Realtors Property Resource, which is, I mentioned that in my handout, and I look over on the right here where it says additional resources. You see that? Notice the wolf howling at the red, whatever. And it says transactions in ZipForms. If I click through, what it's going to do is it's going to load a lot of the basic information into ZipForms. What doesn't it include that MLS Connect would include? And the answer is listing agent information. So when RPR, even though this is a listing in RPR, and even though RPR knows stuff about who the listing agent is, it doesn't import. It only imports the public record information. And a lot of times when it imports, the names of the owner are switched around. So if it might say Devlin Michael rather than Michael Devlin, it's just, you know, it's just a glitch, right? It's just the way it is. There's a third way of getting the information into ZipForms. And the third way, so number one, MLS Connect works the best, brings in listing agent information, has to be in your MLS. Number two, RPR, which also doesn't work all the time, but most listings appear in RPR. What else could I do? If you click on new offer to purchase and we put in, here, let me do this a little bit better. Los Angeles, California, 90077. Now, those of you that are attentive notice that something changed on my screen as I started putting in these numbers, and that's that this blue thing became highlighted. And I would maybe put in here. How about this? All right. What is this? This is called Record Connect. And if we click on it, and we're going to pick residential, but we're going to do Record Connect. And when we click on Record Connect, oops, it'll do it here. And I'm going to pick a different template. Just because that's an old template. All right, personal buyer template. We'll see what that one looks like. We have a transaction group. By the way, if you're on the PLACE team, we're going to create the templates for you. All right, we'll set up the basic group of templates, the buyer representation, the listing agreement, the purchase agreement. We'll set that up for you. We'll put in all the information. We'll put in all the forms. Just saying. So notice what happened when I put in Record Connect is that it's giving me choices. See, it's like, remember I said sometimes it reverses the first and the last name, but this program is smart enough to give you a choice. So that's the seller, right? And we're going to pick that. And then it wants, is there another seller? Now, in this particular case, it becomes a little more complicated because this might be a trust, right? And if it's a family trust, then that would be the name of the seller. The representative would be somebody else. We're not going to do that now because that's a whole nother class. So that's how we get the information into ZipForms, MLS Connect, RPR Connect, or Record Connect. And we now have everything here. Questions about this so far? Well, all right, let's see. All right,
Go
ahead.
I got a question. For the second one, the RPR, you went into KV Core. Do we need to go to KV Core to retrieve the info from?
I have not been in KV Core.
Oh, it looked like it was. Okay.
No, not in a long time.
Okay.
And certainly not today.
All right.
No, I went in, that was RPR, the Realtors Property Resource,
Okay.
not KV Core. This is it. And the logo is in a similar place, but this is RPR. All right. All right. So let's see, what have we done so far? We've certainly spent a lot of time on importing the property data. If you want to create folders, for example, and again, if you're on the team, the transaction coordinator is going to do all this for you. But some of you, alas, are not on a team that provides all this kind of support, which means you're going to have to spend your time doing all this, yourself, instead of talking to buyers and sellers and signing up more people. But you can create a folder where you can put in all your signed documents or all the disclosures, and you can upload. We're going to go through the process of adding forms. Templates are really important because you don't want to be manually typing in your name and your DRE number and your broker's name and looking up the broker's DRE number and then looking up the broker's address and looking at, you don't need to live like that. So you create templates. The 3 templates are buyer representation, the residential listing template, and the purchase template, just to start with. And I've explained how to do that. And for those of you that would like to show me how to do that. All right, so we're going to go back to the dashboard. And if you want to know how to create a template, well, the first thing is to go to templates. You see that up here? Now, this is a little confusing because it says forms and checklists, whereas we're looking for templates. It's the same thing. It's the same thing. So here, I've overdone it. I have, I know. But we have a lot of templates. So if I want to create a new template, I would go to new, and then I would pick which kind of template it is. Now, what we're going to do is, I'm just going to call this a demo buyer template. I have a few of those. What we're going to do is we're going to say, well, this is for residential property or condominium. It doesn't really matter, as I said. because I don't necessarily have a condominium template. Why would I have a condominium template? Well, because if it's a condominium, it's got a homeowner association and there's some, some forms related to that. But then there's homeowner associations, even if it's not a condominium, that will address that. Then I leave it as the default. Do not automatically apply this template to every new transaction. Don't do it. Right? I can't think of why you would want to, because either your information is on the buy side or the sell side. I don't know. You could say, well, if it's a purchase transaction, I want this to be automatically applied, but what if there's something you don't like? It's harder to change. We're going to pick do not automatically apply because we don't want to automatically do it. If we already had a template that we wanted to modify, we could pick it, but we're going to pick save. All right, so here's our template. It looks beautiful. Well, not really. There's nothing there. So the part of this that we want to focus on for the template is the parties. We don't necessarily know who the buyer is. Now, I've had buyers that made offers for months on property. I wrote more than 20 offers for them. I created a template just for them because it already had the buyer's names and the buyer's emails and all of that sort of stuff, because I was doing it again and again and again and again. By the way, if you've done it once, you can take that offer and create a template from it. But otherwise, we don't know who the buyer is when we're doing the template. We don't know who the seller is. We don't know who the listing agent is. Oh, but we do know who we are. And so you would fill this out. Don't worry about agent ID. Nobody uses it. You put in your email. I don't put in a business phone, but I put in a cell phone. And then when it comes to firm name, you put in the name of the broker. You put in the broker's DRE number. The full name of the broker, you can do that, but I don't think anybody really cares, but you can do it. We don't do anything with office ID. Email, we have emails for the broker. I've given you all the information. You fill this out and we save it. Now, so let's say we've already done that. So we've got the parties already in our transaction. So when we apply this template, it's got all of my information and all of my broker's information. I don't have to worry about that. Now, if I want to, I could say, well, if this is a purchase, I'm going to need a purchase agreement. Now, you could add by adding here, it says add a document, and you go to add a form, and up here at the top is the residential purchase agreement. Now, this isn't a bad thing to do, but it doesn't take long to find that form. Let's say the buyer wants to buy land, right? They don't want to buy a 1-to-4 residential property. Well, you've got the California residential 1-to-4 unit contract in your template. You don't have the land purchase agreement in the template. You don't have that. So you have to go add it anyhow. It's up, you understand, it's up to you. Either you can say, I want this always to be there. Great. Or I'll add it later, but most of the time, and usually this is all I put into it, right? If I'm adding a form, that's the only form, because it's already got a whole bunch of other forms, and we will add the forms as we go. By the way, again, if you're on the PLACE team, the transaction coordinator is going to do all this for you. Get it all set up with all the forms that EXP requires, that the California Association of REALTORS says is a suggestion, is all going to be there. Now, checklists, it's true that ZipForms has checklists that you can manually create. They are not user-friendly. There was a time when ZipForms thought that they would be a customer relationship management system and they would have transaction coordination and it'll all be integrated into ZipForms. It's never materialized. I don't know. I have never met anyone that uses ZipForms for transaction coordination itself. I just haven't. And if you're at EXP, we use SkySlope for the actual inputting of it. And we use Brivity for transaction coordination on the PLACE team, which is a way better system. So you're probably never going to do anything with that, right? But if you feel like creating checklists, be my guest. Does everybody understand how to create a template?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, just want to be sure. Oh, what else? So that's enough. Again, we'll do it all for you. I've given you the information for the, let me just make that. I've given you the information for all of the divisions of EXP. If you're not with EXP, you've made a terrible mistake. And you should talk to me. But let me zip this over. So back to our short little article here. So here's all of the information that you would need from the, it's kind of scrunched together. I don't know, maybe it'll look better if I do that. No. But everything that you would need really to fill out one of the forms, the templates is there. If you're doing it yourself, that's a picture of what an active one looks like. Now we're talking about signing. You should practice doing this. All right, let's go back to ZipForms. I'm going to go back to the dashboard. I understand. I do. It's difficult, sometimes challenging, to practice something that you don't see any immediate use for, right? So even if you went through a ZipForms class, if you never fill out any forms and send it to people for signing, you're going to forget. And then when crunch time comes and somebody says, I want to do it now, or now, I want to write an offer now, it's really hard because you don't remember how. That would mean that you would need to practice on a somewhat regular basis until it becomes easy. Now, the reason our transaction coordinator and I can do this very quickly is because we've done it a lot, right? And as you've done it more often, it'll be easier for you, but you're going to have to practice. Now, that could mean creating yourself with maybe another email address as a buyer, as a, buyer that you could use and pick out some properties on the MLS and write an offer. We're not going to send it to anyone, right? You understand? We're not going to do it. This is just for play purposes, and go through the process of signing it so you can see what it looks like when the client gets the email for signing. So I'll look at an example. We're not going to actually send it out, but we're not going to really send it out. Transactions. Oh, come on. It's, let's see if I can get it to do something. All right. I don't even know where we're at right now. Let's go back. Okay. So we're going to look at here. I'm going to send out positive vibes because I know that many of you would love to write an offer on my listing, wouldn't you? Right. Many of you would love that. Wouldn't that be fun? And so if you're wondering how you could do that, I'm going to show you how. So we've done the MLS Connect and we imported all this other kind of stuff. Do I have any documents in this one? No. So I'm going to add a document. Now notice browse for a document, Google Drive are choices. So let's say there's a piece of paper, a PDF that has been sent to you that you need to have signed. Can you use Zip? It's not a form, not a CAR form. Can you do the e-sign through the system? The answer is yes, you just browse and find it. If it's in your Google Drive and you want to set it up for e-sign, you could just find it. We're using a form and we're using the purchase agreement just for fun. Okay, so we're going to open it up. Now, over on the right, we're going to start at the top and click on parties. Now, what we're looking for is the name of it. Now, your buyer's name isn't here yet, right? Because you know, because I don't know who your buyer is. But there would be four names. There would be, and sometimes there's two sellers and two buyers, but anyhow, they would all be here. The seller, the listing agent, the buyer's agent, the buyers. Now, we don't get hung up on, I don't have the seller's email address. We, representing a buyer, never send anything to the seller to sign. The listing agent does. Do I need the listing agent's email to send them stuff to sign? No, we don't do that. Now, we need the listing agent's email because it's part of the form and we need to get it into the form. But generally, we do not send things for electronic signature directly to the listing agent or the seller. We have our client sign it. So if this was an offer, I'd be signing as the buyer's agent. My buyer would be signing as the buyer. We end up with a PDF that has that side signatures, which we send to the listing agent, and then they have to take it from there, which means they have to manually drop in things. It's a little more complicated. Now, you understand, you start by looking to see if everybody's there. Well, let's say somebody's not there. So I would click on add. Add what? A new party, add from Google, add from ZipForms contacts. So if my buyer is in Google, a Google contact, I could do this. If they've done this before and I saved them into ZipForms, I could pick that. We get all of the people here. We only are sending it to us, the buyer's agent, and to the buyer. All right. Everybody clear with that? Second tab is forms. Now, I've only uploaded the disclosure regarding the package for the residential purchase agreement. I haven't uploaded anything else. Sometimes that's all we need. Can somebody tell me, in addition to the package, which includes the fair housing and wire fraud advisory and agency disclosure and consumer safety and the purchase agreement, in addition to that bundle, what other forms might we send with an offer to a listing agent? Anybody want to impress me? Tell me what
Is it
another.
the buyer representation agreement?
The buyer representation agreement, very good, Emily. If we're asking for them to pay, we often include it. Technically, the RPA, when you get to the part that says that the seller is going to pay a certain amount to the buyer to be used as the buyer's agent's compensation, it says that we upload it, we send it to them if requested. But it's a common practice to include a copy of the buyer representation agreement so you could prove that that's the amount the buyer is obligated to pay you. So that's true, very good. What else? What other document would we attach to this?
Would you do the AVID?
The AVID for the buyer, no. The listing agent has an AVID, which is part of the disclosure package, which eventually we're going to need to get the buyer to sign. Now, by the way, one of the other advantages on the team is that the transaction coordinator is going to go through that big stack of disclosures, reports, whatever, and manually drop in all of the signature blocks, initial blocks, and all of that, and send it out for signatures so you don't have to do it. I'm assuming.
How about your proof of funds?
All right. And I assume you're monitoring the chat. Okay. So when we send an offer, that's a very good point who I believe it was, but not what I'm getting at. When we send the offer to the listing agent, we do include a pre-approval letter if it's a loan. If it's a loan or not, we have proof of funds. And then we send them a bundle of purchase agreement documents. And the one that I see most often has not been mentioned, and that is going to be the subject of next week's class, which is a contingency removal form. We're going to talk about contingencies next week. But let's say the seller already had a termite inspection. Let's say the buyer was pre-approved and they don't need a loan or an appraisal. We might add that, right? I'll be covering that later. But right now, we're just going to do this. All right. Now, what I'm going to do is parties. What should I do with this? I'm going to add a new party. Buyer 1 is Billy. Buyer here. How about there? And I'm going to just say, sure, why not? Why not? All right. I'm going to, I could sign as a contact, a signing representative. All right. Let's say the buyer is an LLC, or on the seller side, the seller is a trust. Well, who is the buyer? The answer is it's the name of the LLC. But the LLC can't sign stuff. But there's a person that is connected to the LLC that can sign stuff. That's called the signing representative, and we would put their information in here. All right, but we're not going to make this too complicated, right? This isn't an LLC. We're going to click on save. Whatever. All right, I'm not going to. So now we have a buyer. So we have forms. Here's a form. Now, when we scroll down, you can look just to make sure it's always there. Listing information, offer information, all of that, right? You can click on them. Normally, I don't. I make sure the parties are there. I make sure that the forms are there. If there's a form I need, I would add it. We don't do all the disclosures now necessarily. If the seller has given us a stack of disclosures, a termite, a property, a prelim, except the seller property questionnaire, the transfer disclosure statement, the market conditions advisory, then if they've done all that, then they're oftentimes expecting that we get all that signed and sent with the offer back to them, which is, I'm going to do a class on this, but it's a whole nother issue with ZipForms, because now you have to upload that big stack of documents and you have to manually go in and drop in signature blocks to get them all signed. Again, if you're on the team, we're going to do all that for you. Just saying. So let's just say we're done with this. Notice the blue button in the top right. And by the way, you can save this and come back. Right? It's not oh my gosh, if I can't finish it now, I have to start all over. You can save it. We go to prepare signing. And it says, it wants an address. Wow, I didn't do that. Maybe because I didn't, here, let me do this. MLS number. It didn't import. I'm not going to figure out why this time, but, but I'm jumping around from side to side. Oh, come on. Just, I know it's tired. I understand how it feels. All right. So if we don't do the import, this is what we end up doing. Copying and pasting it in. Let me see. Okay, all right. So we don't have to fill all this out, but we should put in this. And it's in Fremont, California. And I don't know what the zip code is off the top of my head, but it's going to take a while for it to. It's going to tell, there we go. Is it going to tell me now? Why don't I just make up one? All right. because we're not really going to, we're just going to make up something. Okay. So now that we have this, if you don't have everything prepared, the system will stop you. All right, here we go. Signing name. Now notice it's a California Residential Purchase Agreement. So what I usually would do is I would say it's 25930K. I don't, because I'm lazy, do much more than that. So it identifies that as a purchase agreement and for a piece of the address. Then it says, are you looking for DocuSign? Let me just, since DocuSign is reared its head, let me just say something about it. Built into this system is a program called Authentisign. You have already paid for it when you paid your dues to the Association of Realtors. Should you feel generous and want to get a second signing program like DocuSign, be my guest, right? But you only get a certain number of free ones, and then you have to start paying. And I don't understand why you would pay for DocuSign when you have a extremely similar program that you've already paid for that works just fine. I don't know. I would just don't do it. If you want to make sure, because you're a neat person and you want things to go into special folders, you can create folders. We're not going to do that. We're just going to let it go. And so we're going to click on create. And somebody's drawing on my screen again. Is that you, Angela? No, I don't know how.
I already messaged the person who it is.
All right. Were you threatening? All right. So what we've done is, here it is. Now there's some boxes we would check. I go through that when I go through how to fill out the form. Notice over here it says add participants. We click on it and notice one of the choices is add from transaction. And when we click on it, it's going to show me all the people that I identified as being transaction participants. Again, we only need the buyer and we need the selling agent. That would be you. And we click select. Then if this is the basic buyer representation, listing agreement, purchase agreement from CAR, it knows where to put all of the little boxes. It knows. If you feel like it, go ahead and look at every page and make sure that there's initials at the bottom of each page. And you go through, and in the contract, there's some other places where there's more initials. And if you want to do that, I have to admit, I normally don't do that because I've done this so many times. It doesn't mess this up, right? If it's a basic form. Now, if it's one of the weirder forms, we don't use that often. Sometimes it's not as good. But all of the signature blocks have automatically been put in all the way through the end of the package, right? They're all there, all nice and neat. Whatever, right? So we've done that. We've added, and it put in the blocks. Now, again, if this was the disclosure documents that the seller has sent us, all of these documents would be a PDF and we would be manually dragging the information into the different spots because we have to. All right. Any questions so far? All right. We click on next because I'm not getting other questions. We click on next and I don't bother writing a custom invite. I don't. I just send it. I just send it. And I just send it. And what's going to happen is it's going to send all the people, which is me, it's going to send all of us, we're going to get a thing for signing. And it's super easy. You ought to go through the process. You ought to go through the process. You ought to practice. You ought to practice. Is there a way for me to erase all of these things? Let's see. People like their toys. All right. Any questions about this? All right. So I'm not sure, but let's go back here. Make that smaller.
Thank
Is this
you.
it? Is there a question?
No, I just said thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. I don't know where that handout is. So here we go. This is what it looks like. All right, so we've done task management. I make the point that the Brivity platform, which PLACE uses, is way better than ZipForms. Nobody uses it for transaction coordination that I've ever heard of. It has lots of limitation. If you're using our technology platform, then we already have in the system what we need to get started with this, and it just works a lot better. The mobile app. Those of you that have heard me go through the what must you have to be an effective real estate agent on your phone, right? One of them is ZipForms mobile. Now, I find it easier to create the transaction on a computer and fill out everything and get everything. So let's say I'm going on a listing appointment or even a buyer consultation. In advance, I would have created the template and imported the information, and I would have everything I could think of that I could do in advance into that form. Now, if it's a listing, I may not have the list price because we're going to talk about that. I may not have the commission, but I could start with something. I may not have how long it's going to be because that could be negotiated, but pretty much everything else in the listing form I could do in advance. Buyer representation, pretty much the same thing. So I've already done all that work. Before you go, log into that app on your form. Sometimes it doesn't keep you forever. If you haven't used it in a day or two, it kicks you out. I don't like to be trying to log in front of the clients while they're watching me, right? I also find it more difficult to input a lot of information on the phone than versus the computer because, I have little stubby sausage type fingers, right? And it's just harder, to do it all on the phone. That's just my view, right? So ZipForms mobile, RPR mobile, and the software we use, which comes from Chicago Title, which is how to determine what the costs are going to be and the net's going to be from buying and selling. Those are forms that I would definitely have. California Association of REALTORS has a legal hotline. ZipForms has a tech support. Your local associations, and I included Orange County as an example, which has one of the better programs for training their agents. They have many of the local associations have their own support tech for ZipForms. Most of the local associations have ZipForm classes. There's a lone wolf community. All right. But this is something that's worth spending some time on. And finally, as I mentioned maybe once, is that on the PLACE team, part of the value proposition is that we do most of the stuff for you so that you're not spending. I talked to an agent recently that told me that she had spent 3 hours on her own trying to put together an offer, and was basically starting from scratch and self-researching to try and figure out how to do it. 3 hours. All right. And by the way, wasn't successful, right? Wasn't completely successful. And so we took it over and in like 5 minutes fixed it. But then it's, not a fair comparison. We do this more often, right? Does everybody understand you? That's not a good use of your time, right? There's a cost involved in spending a lot of time doing this sort of stuff. And if you're interested in talking about how we could help you be more successful, there's a link there. And I'm not too far over. All right, any questions? This is anything in the chat, Angela?
Nope, we're good.
Okay. Well, that's wonderful.
Hey, Mike, I have a question, and it's not relative to your demonstration today. It's in regards to what you post on Workplace, you know, those articles that you place. A lot of those I like, and I want to repeat it for like my Facebook community. Is there a video of you of how to do that so that it looks exactly the way you do it on Workplace?
No, not really. That material comes from a subscription I have to Keeping.
Oh, okay.
And so you would be borrowing, now I'm not saying that this is an uncommon thing, but you would be borrowing.
Mm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Why don't we talk? PLACE has a social media certification. And by the way, in all the years that I've been using Keeping Current Matters and posting stuff, because I posted on a bunch of different sites, guess how many transactions I've gotten from that?
Probably none.
How many people have called me? Same number. Emailed, texted, yeah. So
I'm
Really,
just thinking of social, you know, they always say that we should make our presence on social media, and I'm not a guru when it comes to social media.
let me stop
So
let me stop this for a second. So and then I'll keep talking.